Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Shot in the Arm, a new documentary from director Scott Hamilton Kennedy, and this is produced by Neil deGrasse Tyson. Interesting. And this is a story exploring the anti-vax movement both historically and in our present political landscape. And what I appreciated about this particular documentary is it does present both perspectives. It spends the time to show people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Del Bigtree, and others who have been at the forefront of anti-vax movement and questioning vaccines. You have Paul Offit, who's one of the main scientists in terms of vaccines today, giving his perspective on things. And you very seldom see a documentary that will go out of its way so much to show these perspectives that generally are not popular, or the perspectives that aren't supporting the thesis of your film. And what I think was most effective in the way that Hamilton Kennedy is able to craft this film is that you present these other perspectives, you show, based off of evidence, that their perspective doesn't always make sense. And it's living or dying based off of data and evidence and being able to show those kinds of perspectives. I appreciated that about the film. I learned a lot about the progress of these movements, the figures behind them, and the controversies behind them. Like, they show Robert F. Kennedy taking pictures with a bunch of Nazis in Germany, and you're just like, he's like, I wasn't there with Nazis, and it's just like, pictures. Or the whole situation in American Samoa, where he went there and was really pushing for these ideas, but he wasn't there. But there's evidence he was. And those kinds of situations. But it also shows enough respect to people. Like, they show mothers who are anti-vaxxers or are pushing to question vaccines, and shows enough respect to, like, hey, there's a root of what's going on here and they want to protect their children. And being respectful on some level to that. Versus, instead of like lumping everybody into the same boat in terms of like people pushing these false narratives versus people that might be misinformed, or they're coming from a particular pace of pain. And I do think there's a couple moments where I thought this film was going to go. One of the most common things you'll see in a documentary that even remotely touches politics today is January 6th insurrection and showing that. And I'm like, God, they're going to do this again? But how they did it and their purpose was actually pretty interesting, because there was a rally going on at the same exact time in D.C. About anti-vax, and them doubling down and showing that connection of them trying to hitch the wagon to the conspiracies about the validity of our last presidential election. You have all those kinds of elements. They go through a lot of detail with it. They talk to a lot of experts in terms of field of vaccines, pointing out the unfortunate disregard for the to people who have autism, and scapegoating them and painting them as like ostracized people who are just diseased, instead of like, some people are just autistic. And that really hit a chord especially too. I do feel like this documentary gets a bit obnoxious at times though, with like the whole entire like rah 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 vaccines, and it's just like, you spend all this time talking about how you shouldn't politicize vaccines, and then show a bunch of stuff of like doing these PR campaigns about vaccines, and you're just like, doesn't always feel the most genuine in terms of that perspective, and can be a little bit obnoxious and in your face about it. Obviously, this film is meant to show the validity, importance of vaccines, but it does kind of turn it into a bit of a over-the-top show at times, which I don't think worked as well, and also I don't think it benefited the film. It honestly kind of shows a bit of smugness at times too. But in general, I thought this was very well thought out, well researched, well structured documentary that has all these different kinds of perspectives and has you sit there processing through all of them. Even though obviously this documentary has a specific perspective, it's still important that it takes the time to really break down these other perspectives and at least present them to you, and you have to be able to process it yourself as well. But those are my thoughts on Shot in the Arm. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in, supporting your Wasteland reviewer.